Hi there. Wet hair again. I have one more journal for you from the same day. It was the first one of that day, and the Mayan day was 3 dog. It's a little long. Free will. There's certainly a lot of discussion about it running around, and I can see why. It hinges on at least a couple of things that I can see. One is the definition of self, and the other one is the whole concept of cause and effect. Both of these play key roles in an individual's ideas around free will. Those who identify with the body, seeing it as the self, seem to often mean by that the conscious mind. That's the part of us that's most easily accessible, the one we spend the most time in. For them, it creates a problem when they discover that the brain knows up to 6 seconds ahead of the conscious mind just what we will do. It even knows before the choice is offered, and this has come up in a number of scientific experiments. And let's see, I'll give you a video link again for one of these. So, what is free will? It's the ability to make a choice freely at its most basic. The question that deserves to come up before that one is, who am I? How do I define this self that is making the choice? Who chooses? Things change radically depending upon how we answer this primary question. Those who believe they're the consciousness or the being instead of the form may consider that they make the choice even before they're born of who their parents are. They choose their gender, their DNA, and they get a preview of their major life situations, all before coming down into 3D. Nothing is forced. Now, you can see how those who believe themselves to be only the body or the body-mind would object to that whole line of thought. So, we have some legitimately differing perspectives. I hope we're adult or mature enough to work around that. Most of us are. So right up front, let's recognize that there's no right and no wrong here. Things are just what they are, and different people make different choices. Where from there? I'd say right now that the bulk of the people believe themselves to be the body-mind. By that, they generally mean the conscious aspects of self, since few allow for the part the subconscious and the unconscious mind play in their lives. Even though it's established that people are both driven and largely controlled by the contents of their subconscious mind, since they don't know or have access to those contents, few are willing to make allowances for that. It makes them seem out of their own control. The net result is that few people understand even themselves. All of us do or say things at times that surprise us. It also takes getting into certain situations to bring to our attention beliefs that we didn't even know we held. Human nature is largely a mystery still. Few know truly why they do and say all that they do, or why other people do. Thus, many who wish they could change this or that about the self, let's say overeating or cigarette smoking or uncommitted sex, find it quite difficult to do so. Now this, on the face of it, alerts us to a lot. First, it shows up the fact that as the conscious mind or body mind, we do not truly have free will, or we would just stop when we want to. We want to, right? Yet we don't. It shows us that what drives us operates below conscious thought. So for this discussion at least, let's all admit that we're more than just the conscious aspect of our being or mind. Again, if we were just that, then decisions would be far easier to make and we would likely understand the self. They are not, and we do not. So it's good for all to expand their definition of self to at least include both the subconscious and unconscious mind. They do play a part. And parenthetically, I've said, and all of this is without even considering the superconscious mind, or what some call the higher self. Oh me, oh my. The body isn't as solid and stable as we tend to believe it is either, nor is anything else. Aside from the fact that all atoms are largely empty space, 99.umpty-ump-nines, percent empty, the mind controls the body to a large extent. Take instances of those with multiple personalities. You can find these if you go look. Documentation shows us how one personality can have cancer and not another one, both using the same body. One can have blue eyes and the other one brown. Again, same body. Yet, it seems to me science tends to largely ignore such things. They don't fit the current paradigm. Not only do we not understand ourselves very well, we don't have that great a grip on physical reality in general. Yet, we think we do, and therein lies the challenge and the blind spot for most of us. When we believe we know something, by definition, we're closing the door to alternate views. Why should we pay attention to them when we know that this is right, whatever it is? So we don't, and arguments can ensue. I've come to believe that basically nothing is what we think it is here in 3D. And I know many are joining me worldwide. But that's not helpful to this discussion. So what agreements can we come to? I'm not sure. Rather than try to lay it out by presenting all the different points of view, I think I'll just share mine. That's enough, since that's all I'm really qualified to do. I'll be most interested in dissenters, though, so do leave comments or videos speaking up about your vision of things. Having looked deeply into the available research and science on NDEs, near-death experiences, and combining this with my own and others' OBEs, or out-of-body experiences, I've come to know self as much more than my form or my mind. With tens of millions of people reporting these after-death experiences, science is finally being practically forced to take the phenomenon seriously, and it is. The research on this is out there and available, so I won't belabor that point. Admittedly, there's not a lot of it. It's only recently that it's been taken sufficiently seriously, but there are some very good studies. Research and scientific studies. There will always be skeptics, so no matter what, but the amount of data and evidence already existing is significant. PMH Atwater alone has a research base of over 4,000 experiencers that she's directly interviewed. And she's just one example. We don't have to depend on first-person reports to make up our minds. I've been out of my body and know for a fact that I exist independent of it. The second that you're out, you just know this. The fullness of who and what I am is actually increased and enhanced when out of the form, or that's how it seems. It appears to be even more so for people experiencing an NDE. They go into what some call a hyper or super reality, being more real than their whole entire life in 3D. For them, this life, the 3D one, appears more as a dream than a fact from the vantage point of the other side. Now remember, just different perspectives on the same thing, life or reality. None right, none wrong. Such states can, thankfully, be attained in other ways. It's good to know we don't need to almost die to access much of what they have discovered. Just by deep meditation or going into what I call heart, and not the organ nor the chakra, one can step quite out of space and time. Intense emotional experiences, even physical ones, can bring on the same thing. People can have an NDE then. It appears to be accessible to us all under the right circumstances. So, if we take the self to be consciousness or being or spirit, some call it soul, what then is free will? Where does it reside from that perspective? Does it reside in what we could call the higher self, the higher dimensional being? Or is it perhaps a function of the subconscious working together with the conscious mind? Just who makes the choices for us? Who is this I? And when we say we're consciousness, what does that really mean? What of all these various parts of the self? What's that? Now, to me, we're a multifaceted being, far more spread out than just that which occupies 3D. We're multidimensional, existing concurrently on higher dimensions as well. We're not as limited as we've been taught that we are, not at all. We're actually powerful creator beings using a 3D disguise. Try that one on. We have access to all knowledge, not just what's recorded here on Earth. Those having NDEs are some of the most vocal about this aspect of our being. Until we make at least some adjustments in the way we view or define the self, it will be hard to get a true answer to the who am I question. Yet we've got to be open for that. How open are you? The sleeple and the sheeple just assume they know the answer to who am I. Anyone who is really self-observed is a bit more humble in the face of that question. Just as we are multidimensional across space, we also exist spread out across time. We are living many lifetimes in the eternal now in simultaneous time. When we choose to rise above the linear concept of 3D time, past to present to future, all in a straight line, we find we can witness or experience any time we choose just by shifting our focus or thought. What mankind hasn't fully come to grips with yet is how very powerful are his beliefs. We structure not just the experience of ourself, but of our whole reality based on what is growing in our garden of belief, most of which is subconscious, so not easily accessible. We don't even know fully what we believe, strange as that might sound at first. Plus, each belief serves to limit or restrict us in some way or another, sometimes severely, as with religious beliefs that come with a whole doctrine and dogma attached. Each belief comes with its own set of blinders that control what we perceive, what we allow the self to perceive. The placebo effect is one good example of the power of a very simple belief. Once we discover the true power belief holds over us, we will be far more cautious about both what we believe and who we allow to step in and change those beliefs or try to. We'll view advertising in a whole new way. and not favorably. We'll be far more suspicious of anyone working to change or mold our beliefs. And all of that will be wise. The goal of the belief molders is to get beliefs down into our subconscious mind, where we have little access to them, where they're not seen. There are many illicit and immoral methods in use today to plant such beliefs. Most methods use subliminally programming info, so to slip past the gateway of the conscious mind unnoticed. What's being done is far darker than almost anyone realizes, except those in the know in advertising and in government. We have truly been asleep to allow this. In its way, it's an attempt to take over our free will, to mold and control that, and it works. That's the bad news, but that's why it's used. It sells product at the very minimum, and that's dark enough. But what else is done subliminally or without our conscious knowledge is even darker. But don't go there. This isn't about that. Let's stay in heart. When considering free will, though, it's important to look at what factors are impacting it, and subliminal manipulation plays a bigger role than most currently acknowledge. While most people choose to turn a deaf ear or a blind eye to such tactics being used against them, many of us are waking up to what's going on. We're finally willing to come out of our sleepless state and take the nasty medicine of discovering what is really happening. So, do we have free will? Do you see now how completely dependent your answer is on your self-definition? If you think that you're the body or the body-mind, then a reasonable answer is no, or only partially, for it's not in the conscious aspect of being where the whole of it resides. When we look out at life, at our life, we see that we don't always get what we want. Again, though, getting what we want has everything to do with our definition of we, or the I there. Who is this I doing the wanting? I hope you can see how the answer completely rests on that. For those whose I definition is much broader, encompassing the more inaccessible regions of mind, the subconscious and the unconscious, the answer is different. They are aware that we can have conflicting views or values between the conscious and subconscious aspects of self. In other words, we can work against ourself. Something desired by the conscious mind may be denied by our subconscious beliefs. For instance, you may want to be rich, but have hidden beliefs that wealth corrupts, or that all wealthy people are evil and manipulative. So, since we don't want to be evil and manipulative, much more than we do want to be rich, the net effect is that we don't get what the conscious mind sets out for, riches. So when someone with this broader I definition, the one that encompasses the whole of the mind, not just the conscious part, asks the free will question, their answer is liable to be, yes, we do. Why is that, since we don't necessarily get what we want or will to get? It's because these people tend to realize that even though the subconscious and unconscious mind may be largely inaccessible to our conscious self, yet they are still the self, and decisions made there are still ours. Plus, we still have some measure of control over them. These realize that it takes more self-knowledge to master their will. Though they won't likely call it that, these people are aware of and likely working in their internal garden of belief. They know how their subconscious beliefs largely run the show in 3D. Some of these use NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, hypnosis, and other methods to get down in there and make change. Thus, they also know they have some say-so over what's down in there. They've taken a good deal of their power back, just by defining the self more broadly than the only conscious part, or the physical. I'll close by covering the group that I'm a part of, those whose self-definition, well, self can't truly be defined, is closer to consciousness, being, or soul. For this bunch, the answer is often a definite, you bet we do, to the question of having free will, though they may not be consciously aware of the many aspects of their being, for instance, able to recall other lifetimes or access the subconscious mind, yet they know these exist and are aspects of their very own being, and they're willing to own them. This last group is aware that we choose all of the major aspects of any incarnation we take on. We choose our parents, our DNA, and we are aware beforehand of the major blessings and challenges of the upcoming life. So even though when in the body we picked, things may not seem to be going the way we'd like, we're well aware that in the higher dimensions, they are going exactly as we chose for this life. Now, all of this has been said without bringing in God or religion at all. I don't find that if there is a God or source, that it works against or for free will. I don't see that it's necessary to hold a belief in a God in order to understand and work with free will. While it's true that there's a possibility that mankind overall were given free will when this universe was created, what does that matter? Even if it came out of a big bang, free will could still be the case. What does that change about the day-to-day operation of free will? And I'll give you a footnote at the end on that. I find it fun to imagine what a universe would be like where there was no free will. Boy, does that ever pretzel the mind, recognizing that we don't understand much of what we haven't experienced ourselves. Now, there's much that I didn't cover here. I guess I'll cover one more thing before closing, and that's prediction or prophecy. Many consider that if we do have free will, then how can things possibly be pre-known? To them, that just doesn't make sense. Some, when going down this particular conceptual road, have even come up with a deterministic universe completely absent all free will. They say they can't choose. Everything is predetermined. Well, let's take a look from another angle. Let's say you're driving rather recklessly up a mountain road. You're going over the speed limit, quite lost in the joy of pushing the limits or in some worry or another, whatever. Let's say there is a God, one who can easily look ahead and see where your journey will be taking you. Just around the next curve, there's a major hairpin turn. And let's say at the speed that you're going, you're not likely to make that curve. Your incarnation's getting ready to be over. Now here's my question for you. Just because the God being knows what is likely coming up for you, and the fact that you won't likely make the curve, and that you're facing the end of your incarnation, does that mean that the God being made that happen? Predetermined it? Does that God being necessarily have diddly squat to do with what's up ahead for you? What does that being's foreknowledge really amount to? How does it impact the driver's free will? Sure, it's possible for the driver to send up a prayer once she sees what's about to happen, gets closer and sees the curve. In that case, it's also possible for the God being to intervene, to somehow soften the blow of what would have happened otherwise. So the God being can possibly have an effect, but do notice how free will was still respected. It took the call to compel the answer. In a free will universe, the God being doesn't intervene otherwise. that still doesn't in any way limit free will. Much that is prediction or so-called prophecy is just from being able to look down the current timeline for someone or for whatever. That means that if the person doesn't make any changes to the way that they're going, certain things can be deduced to happen going forward. They're the natural flow of the outcome. That doesn't take away free will either, since that person is still totally free to make whatever changes and choices she likes. This relies more on physics than many people currently see. Now, what about real prophecy, such as that of Nostradamus or the Book of Revelations? Aside from the fact that a huge portion of it is clothed in language that's quite obscure and open to multiple interpretations, and that should be considered, what is going on there? It's a fact that some things have been accurately predicted, have happened as stated. So what of that? How can there still be free will if that's the case? Look again. First off, do take into account and eliminate all that is merely the looking ahead at the timeline, like what's up ahead for that driver. Some simply have the ability to do that. While many of those things may happen as predicted, most of them don't. What is reported to us is only prophecy's successes, and for every success, there are 100, maybe 1,000 or more failures. Let's also consider that. In addition, let us consider for a moment how mankind is being manipulated. Most of us can see the hand of the powers that were at work in the world over the recent centuries. It's safe to assume they play a part in at least some of this. There are certain beliefs they want the populace to hold. These, the Illuminati, the bad guys, if you will, are well aware of the creative power of belief. In fact, they're largely controlling that, or at least they have been. Thus, isn't it safe to assume that they play a part in some of this prophecy? When we look at life through the lenses that know of the power of beliefs to create, we can see how much of current life is based on beliefs the powers that were have crafted or helped to bring about. Prophecy is one of their most powerful tools. By its use, they get masses of people believing in exactly the same thing, and it's usually dire or dark, sometimes with even a particular date, such as Y2K. Do you recall all of the dark prophecies set for that time that didn't happen? Now, back to free will existing alongside of prophecy. How can that work? Do see the hand of the powers that were behind quite a bit of the prophecy that's circulating now. Look at how dark and dismal the predictions are. Heck, even the movies. Anything to get us believing in dismal stuff. Can you see how it would benefit the powers that were to have mankind believing in such things? How that would make us fearful and distracted from everyday life, more biddable? And can you see how that would be to their advantage? I certainly can. The way I see it, prophecy is often given to get mankind into a state of fear and unease, to keep him or her in overall anxiety. That makes us much easier to control. Also, the way I see it, we too can come into knowledge of the power of belief to create. We can simply change our beliefs, my friends. That is under our power to control. Whether certain things happen or not depends very much on us and on what we choose to believe. If you deeply believe in certain things, it's time to take responsibility and to realize that you're helping thereby to bring them about. That's how things work. beliefs create. Were we all, right now, to adopt the belief that we'd all find ourselves in higher consciousness in a very short while, so it would be. We are the creators of our reality. Reality comes from within, not from without, which only reflects the within. The more mankind comes back into awareness of our overall power to manipulate life and reality, the more we're taking over from the powers that were, from those who have been running the show up to now. We have that power. Yet it's like the prison key in the breast pocket, useless until recognized. That's how the powers that were have been creating things as they are now, by manipulating our beliefs. It's time we woke up to this. So you bet we have free will. We have more than that. What it amounts to is that we are the creator gods, small g, of this reality. What we're seeing play out here is quite based on our choice. Collectively and individually, we're working to bring this about. Yet, as long as we continue to play the victim card, find ourselves pointing fingers of blame anywhere else, including at the powers that were, then we're not yet fully grown up. We're not taking responsibility for what we can truly accomplish here. If each one would just do their part, clean up their own beliefs, oh my God, it would all change. Oh well, I've gone on so long. What's one more thing, right? I'll add to the rest the potential reality of other timelines. Most of us are familiar with some theories in physics that allow for an infinite number of timelines. Timelines in which you made every possible choice at every choice point. Well, what does that view say about free will? Let's look at it. Perhaps life under those conditions would amount to more of a steering of the self through one's chosen route, through that infinite maze. Then again, perhaps in other aspects of one's being, each and every choice was also taken and lived, again, by another aspect of your very own being. Does that preserve your free will? Well, if you get to choose at each of those choice points, I'd say that it does. Furthermore, it can be looked at as accommodating any possible choice path you could desire. Thus, that more than accommodates free will. Do you see? It seems to me, in conclusion, finally, that what it takes is a broadening of the overall definition of self in order to come to this conclusion that we do have free will. I can also see how those who think we don't have a legitimate point. They may not acknowledge that they are creating that outcome, but that doesn't matter. Their point still holds. The way they choose to see it, they do not have free will. So, no right, no wrong, just is. That's my conclusion anyway. What do you think? Why not make a video response and share with us? The more we get together in our beliefs, the more powerful we are overall to bring about whatever we want. And the way I see it, it's the children who will do this. Namaste. Okay, here's my footnote. Earlier I said, I forget what I said, but here's my footnote. I said that God or no God, free will's operation still doesn't change. I will admit that if God or divinity is the case, then that does make a possible impact on free will. It actually gives it more power, which would be accessed through the mode of prayer. This doesn't change anything, though, since this is contained within the concept of free will. By her free will, she chose to access this power enhancer of the intervention or assistance from spirit or higher dimensions. So overall, it doesn't impact the existence of free will. I hope this is reasonably clear. Good day.